In today's video, I'll be pulling back the curtain on some of the worst kept secrets in the motorcycle service industry. But before you even assume that you're always getting the short end of the stick, there's more to the story than what meets the eye. Now, let's kick this off with something sweet before we get down and dirty into the gritty details. And that comes down to when you're timing to buy your motorcycle. If you're looking for the best deals on when to buy a motorcycle from a motorcycle dealership, that would be at the end of the month, or even better, at the end of the year. Dealerships are under immense pressure to meet these sales targets, and their numbers get reported to the higher ups. So when they have a higher boost in sales, they have a better standing with the guys upstairs. Larger sales numbers help secure more and better inventory for the following year. So at the end of the year, salespeople and dealerships, they're more willing to lose out on potential commission in order to boost those annual sales numbers at the end of the year report. Now that's about all I have for good news for y'all, sorry to say. So we're gonna get down into the gritty just about now. Now, ongoing training is essential for keeping technicians updated on the latest procedures and tools. But due to a lot of shops being understaffed, this kind of makes it a little bit more difficult to happen with new techs, and they're often left to be working under limited to no supervision at all. And most of the time, they're given a manual and they're just told, figure it out for yourselves. Now, I'm not even gonna begin on getting into some people's lack of ability onto how to read a manual, especially mainly the new ones or the ones who are undertrained, and we'll cover that in just a second. They often lack the thorough understanding of following critical maintenance procedures, such as adhering to torque specs or even using certain tools correctly. From my own personal experience, I had seen a new tech once using the tire balancer, and I noticed he wasn't using it correctly, and when I asked him about it, he had told me that no one had showed him how to use it properly, and that was just the way he's been doing it the whole time since he's been there. Having a tire properly balanced ensures even weight distribution. A tire that is not properly balanced, that can cause poor handling, vibrations, even uneven tire wear, and all these things in the long run can pose a potential safety risk for the rider. Now, besides examples of people being improperly trained, there have been some situations in my history of working in dealerships where certain people were hired who should have not even been nowhere near the back of the shop, especially touching tools on customers' bikes. But the hiring of incompetent workers is more of the fault of upper management, and which I would assume would be for wanting to save money on payroll, because I really don't understand otherwise why I have seen these situations happen, but they do happen, and that's something that's out of the control of us as mechanics and y'all as customers. But it is something to be aware of, that it is potentially does happen out there in the field with people being hired who definitely should have never been hired. Now, there are those cases where, due to a shop being understaffed, a lot of techs, and not necessarily new techs, but just even techs on the lower end of experience, they're given jobs much bigger than that they can handle, but there's really no other option for it to be done otherwise. And when these happen, there's more cases or more probability of mistakes being made, causing for more downtime of the bike being left in the shop for longer periods of time for the things that went wrong to get fixed, in which causes either the customer, but mainly the service department, to have to shell out more money. Because in those cases, really, for the most part, service might, stretch the truth as to why the motorcycle is left in the shop longer, or why the job hasn't been completed in the proper time frame. But from what I have seen, service tends to eat those costs when it's the fault of a mechanic breaking something or not installing something properly. Now, there is a way for you to avoid running into situations where you have an unexperienced tech working on your bike, and that's just requesting a specific tech to work on your bike when you bring your bike into the shop, whether it's for service or repairs. For example, requesting for a master tech to work on your bike. But one thing you've got to keep in mind if you do go for this option is that you're probably going to have to wait a little bit longer to be put on the schedule, since better techs tend to have busier schedules. Although this might involve a longer wait time, it does ensure that a more experienced tech is working on your bike. And to build a relationship with a mechanic, if you haven't already, it's rather simple. If you have a tech who worked on your bike, whether service or repairs, and you feel like they did a good job, remember their name. Just a simple thank you or a small gift of gratitude, just the smallest gesture of thank you can go a long way in just building a good relationship with a mechanic. And it means a lot, even just a simple thank you. It goes a long way. So, learn the name of your mechanic that did a good job, that you feel treated your bike with respect, and next time just ask for them to work on your bike. And it's as simple as that. And I'll tell you from my experience, service writers and managers do respect this when customers ask for someone specific. I have seen it many times, and I've never seen them not go about a customer's wishes of a certain tech working on the bike. Now this one is more of a consequence due to a problem which I will go into later into this video, but a lot of gaskets and single-use bolts are reused due to a lack of supply from the parts department. Now, although this is mainly done in order to get the bike out of the shop faster so the customer's out riding, work orders are closed, and tech gets paid faster, since most techs are flat rate, and well, just about all techs are flat rate. So it gets them, their paycheck sooner. And having to stop a job over a single bolt or a single gasket due to the incompetence of the parts department of holding stock properly can tempt them to just reuse certain items. But this essentially, when reusing gaskets, they lose their integrity after the first time that they've been fastened. And in the long run, it can potentially cause leaks. Does it always? Not really, but that risk is much higher when you're reusing a gasket. And single-use bolts, when you are reusing them, even though techs will put Loctite in those cases to try to avoid this from happening, but they lose their ability to hold tension as, more properly. Now, besides certain parts being reused, like gaskets or single-use bolts, there are certain things I do want y'all to know that I feel like US customers ought to know that happen during routine services. During those 5,000-mile routine services, not every single tech follows the complete list and manuals for those specifics for that mileage. Some may skip seemingly minor steps. These are certain things that should be done at every single service, but in order to save time and hence making more money to get the job done faster, they'll kind of just slide past that and just do all the major things, such as checking tires, oil, and air filter, and kind of leaving the smaller things out. Essential checks, such as even checking valve clearance or even brake fluid quality on a motorcycle, often can get overlooked in the name of speed. And this issue mainly comes from the flat rate pay plan, which rewards the quickness of completion of a job over the integrity and thoroughness of it. And this leads some techs to cut corners. I'll tell you, a good service writer should be able to tell you exactly all that entails of a routine service down to the nitty-gritty. Don't be scared to ask for a detailed run-through of exactly what is supposed to be done on a routine service, just so you know what to expect and to kind of hold them liable of getting it all done properly. And when you get your bike, kind of just check to see if the smaller things, if you notice that if they had been performed. While you can't always prevent these issues, finding and remembering a good tech who goes the extra mile is really beneficial in this case. A master tech of mine once told me when I first started in the field that these routine services are rather expensive and customers can't necessarily see where their money went when they spend money on them. But if they get their motorcycle back and they feel their throttle cables are smoother or their kickstand is sturdier, they can feel where their money went, and it makes them feel like it was money well spent. Now, not everyone has that goes the extra mile mindset, but if you find a mechanic like that, it is like a good apple out of a bunch. When you find it, you pick it and you keep it for yourself. You remember their name and you request them the following times, and don't forget to show your gratitude towards them. Now I'm just curious, have you ever had a service where you feel like they had missed something? And if so, how did you find out? I am curious, let me know in the comments below. I want to hear all the stories. Now, while we're on the topic of mechanics, do know a good mechanic will never intentionally rip you off. If anything, they'll just suggest the service a little bit earlier than it's probably necessary for it to be done. And the best way to clarify this is just to ask what needs to be done now and what can wait. And service writer, they'll figure out this information by asking the tech, and when they present it to you, that is a pretty good way to get the more deeper truth on what services are more essential at that time being and what you have time for to prepare financially wise and scheduling wise. Generally speaking, motorcycle dealerships do want to maintain that customer loyalty because they don't want you to run off to go to smaller independent shops. I have never seen a technician suggest something to service writers that a customer needs with the intention of ripping them off or trying to scam the customer. Now, with that said, even with the best intentions at heart, some mechanics might misdiagnose something, which leads to unnecessary repairs done. Now, this can be due to rush diagnostics, limited diagnostic tools, undertrained staff, or even just simple human error. Even skilled technicians might misidentify an issue. It's more of an honest mistake than an intentional way to rip you off. Now, this whole topic can be rather frustrating to customers, and understandably so, of not being properly informed when there has been an error in the diagnostics from the technician's behalf. In cases of where there has been a misdiagnosis and an unnecessary repair was made, instead of being upfront about it and seeming incompetent or risking to ruin their reputation, a service manager might lie to the customer, stretch the truth, and say indeed both parts that were replaced, they were both faulty. But this is more to kind of protect themselves out of fear of causing even more bigger issues. Besides misdiagnosing, there are instances where replacing one part uncovers an underlying issue in a whole another part, leading that both parts had failure and were problematic. Now, if you're concerned whether you're being played in this manner, or if they're not being upfront with repairs, you can always ask to see the part that is being replaced. But do keep in mind, if it is an electrical component, you're not going to see any visible issues with it, as those issues tend to be hidden from the eye when they do go bad. Now, I do have a question on this topic for y'all. We have many questions today. Have you ever felt like a repair was done that wasn't necessary? And if so, how did you figure that out? Now, with all my questions, I am not some Harley-Davidson person taking notes, trying to figure. I'm just generally curious as a former mechanic and to see things from the other side on the customer's point of view and experience. Another big issue that I have seen in my experience as a mechanic is the delay in parts that hold up the timeline and the movement of jobs being able to be completed in a timely manner. And when there's a delay in parts, it makes the service department look incompetent or unresponsive, when in truth, that issue has nothing to do with service department, but in a whole another department, in the parts department. And in both dealerships I've worked, there have been issues and beef between the service department and parts department, with them being under two different managements and them not working together and most of the time, service is made out to be the bad guy when it is just due to the disorganization or carelessness of management and a whole nother team and department. And when service writers are telling customers that we're having a parts delay, whether it be due to parts staff not putting in the order in a timely manner or just things being back ordered, regardless of the truth, it still makes service look bad, like we don't really care about the customer. But there is one dirty truth in this topic I do feel like I need to add, and that is sometimes service drops the ball and will blame parts. So it's hard to come down to, as the customer, to know when the truth is or what the truth is. This ball can be dropped mainly that I've seen on older bikes where the job tends to be a little bit more difficult or the parts tend to be more back ordered, or even bigger jobs that have a whole lot of labor hours that need to be done to them. Sometimes in busy schedules and busy times, the ball gets dropped on putting those jobs back on the schedule, even if the parts have already arrived and we service writers or service managers just kind of forgot to put it back on the schedule. And when customer calls and they're like, hey, my bike's been there for 3 weeks, what's going on? They'll kind of say, oh, we're still waiting for the part, but it should be here in 2 days or in a few days, and we'll have your bike on the schedule by the end of the week. More to save face beyond anything. So to avoid criticism, the blame sometimes does get put on parts being back ordered instead of actually saying, oh, hey man, we totally forgot your bike was here. We didn't realize the parts were here, and it's just been sitting here this whole time and we had no idea for a little while. Now, to keep your bike on the radar, I do suggest calling service department every few days as for updates or a reminder. Calling frequently and every single day will not get the job done faster. Just to stress that message to y'all out there of those who want to call multiple times a day to your service writers. That will not change anything if they are jack booked and they cannot squeeze you in because of whatever reasoning it might be. It just won't do anything but stress you out more and stress out the service writers up front and just create a more stressful environment for everyone. So I highly stress that will not help. But do calling every few days to kind of stay on top of it will help keep your job on their radar and as a priority on the top of the minds of service writers and service managers. And I have seen that tends to work in a positive manner of getting it out of the shop quicker and the job done quicker. So I do want story time from y'all if y'all have had repairs that were delayed due to parts issues at your service department and what that part was. I'm just curious because sometimes it'll be the most seemingly insignificant part, or sometimes it can be a whole crane case, and of course that might take a little while. Now, beyond problems between parts and service, I do feel like there's an even bigger problem between sales department and service department. A common issue amongst a lot of dealerships, cars, and motorcycles is the handling of pre-sale inspections. During a pre-sale inspection, mechanics will look, in this case, a used motorcycle before it goes to be sold, of any potential repairs that need to be done before it gets put on the floor for, to be sold. However, in both dealerships I've worked with, talking to other techs who have worked in other dealerships across the country, this is a very common issue where sales will not approve on many repairs in the sake of wanting to earn a bigger commission on the sale. For the most part, the most annoying truth is they will agree on repairs that are visible, like tires, or something just like an actual rattle that is really loud that you can't hide. Things that a customer will notice right away before buying a bike. They will approve on those to get sold. But I have been told from sales and my service manager, due to him being told by sales that they will not cover the repair, that if there's a leak, clean it up with brake cleaner, hide all evidence of the leak. And if it's a minor leak, it won't be noticed for another few weeks or months, depending on how the customer rides. And they kind of hope that customer won't notice. I don't know. They more just care about getting the bike out that door and getting that sale in their pocket. Every tech I've met hates this. It will cause such a screw the sales team. I have heard it so many times. Service, from my experience, never got along with sales, mainly for issues like that. And as a result of all of this leaves service in such a sticky position, because once the customer finds out there's an issue with their bike, they go to their salesman. Their salesman says, well, our mechanics did perform a pre-sale inspection and approved the bike for sale, but go take the bike to service and, they'll figure it all out. And sometimes the shop has to eat those costs, but for the most part, we try to charge sales or try to work out a deal with the customer of, getting it at a lower cost for them to get it fixed. But it makes service look like the bad guys. It makes us look incompetent, like we let a bike go with a leak, that we didn't catch it. Because with both dealerships I've worked at, the general manager and the store owner, they would not allow service to throw sales under the bus, because sales is the golden baby. We're just the people in the back doing work, us mechanics. So we definitely could never, tell the customer that sales screwed them or lied to them. That would have gotten service manager in trouble or service writers in trouble. It's just a gross, sticky situation. And with that said, I do have another question. Have you ever bought a bike from a dealership and had issues that followed with it right after the purchase and was told either that service was to blame, or I'm just curious how the dealership handled that situation and all, and if you got it fixed, and how's your bike doing now? Now, I'm sure you're curious of how service handles problematic customers, whether or not you're one of them. I will say the biggest thing that I've noticed is a customer calling frequently, multiple times a day, every single day, in the morning, noon, and evening. Trust me, I have seen it. And they will call asking for updates, and they will get the same information. We're still waiting for parts. And even if that's true, that can be the most hardcore truth about what's the reason of the holdup, but customer doesn't want to believe it and believes that if they call within 3 hours, there's going to be a change of information. So I have seen this done in both dealerships, but granted more frequently in the first, is the swapping of parts on bikes in order to tame a fiery hot customer and get them out of our hands and back on the road and away from our ears. You gotta keep in mind, besides even just being focused on techs getting paid and work orders getting closed, impatient customers can cause a stressful work environment for service writers where they have nothing to do with these issues. They're just the middleman, but they have to take all the bullets being cussed out by customers. And when, they get stressed out, it just creates a more hostile work environment. And we're there all day, every day. They're there all day, every day. And you still, when you're a manager, you're gonna want everyone to be happy, your workers and the customers. So to appease these situations, I have seen, if we're waiting on a part, they will take it off of a donor bike, another bike that's there for a service or just some sort of repair that isn't immediate. They will take it off that bike, put it on the bike of the problematic customer, in order to get them out the door, say the repair was done, give them their bike, and when that new part does arrive finally from the parts department, we will just put it and replace it on the donor bike. And this causes an issue where now with the donor bike, we have to make an excuse of why their repairs are delayed, but there are those cases where due to the timing of everything, it never causes any delays or additional backups, and nobody ever finds out that, they got a new part or the impatient customer has a used part on their bike. I will say being a problematic customer might, in some cases, get the job done quicker, but I will tell you, it definitely won't get the job done better. Now, with that topic being said, I want to know if any of y'all want to admit, and you can use this as a safe place, of being that problematic customer? Or do you think you were ever titled as the problematic customer? And if so, why did you act that way? And if you thought it was appropriate. I'm just curious if anyone here out there wants to admit of being that person, because they are definitely out there, but I'm curious if anyone will admit to it. And if so, tell me why. We're in a safe place. I ain't gonna do nothing about it. I might just get a kick out of your answer, but that's about it. Since we covered problematic customers and how service might handle them, I do want to add this bit here, that treating service staff, whether it's the service advisors, service managers, or even techs, even though I know customers rarely have access to them, will benefit you. Treating them well will benefit you so much more than treating them poorly ever will. Positive interactions, leaving good reviews, or even just showing kindness will cause and influence the work that gets on your bike, as in more of the cases of us techs wanting to go the extra mile for you, or a service manager coming to a tech and saying, hey, this is a great customer, make sure you look through his bike very thoroughly. We want to do him well, or her. You've got to keep in mind, mechanics, most of us are really passionate about our jobs. We ride motorcycles. Well, most of us do. There are some motorcycle mechanics who don't ride motorcycles, and I'll tell you, we don't really like those kinds. But I will say, in a majority, most mechanics, they really care about ensuring keeping your bike safe and keeping you safe out on the road. Now, I do want to bring some peace of mind. Even if you're the most unpleasant customer out there, a mechanic will never intentionally do something that'll risk your safety. I have never seen or heard that to be done. If anything, you're just not gonna have the extra mile, a tech go the extra mile to make sure your bike not only runs, but it runs as smoothly as possible. You've got to remember, being rude, well, pretty much the only thing you'll gain from that is having a mechanic rush through a job in order to have peace of mind and for everyone in the department. So it's not necessarily going to get you much further than that. And I'm speaking on almost all mechanics here. We definitely don't want anyone to get hurt on a bike that we've worked on, or just in general on a bike. And that's why it frustrates us so much when, the sales department doesn't approve of certain jobs that are rather important in significance on the safety aspect, and the sake of them earning a higher commission. It definitely brings a lot of frustration to the service team. While not all mechanics will go above and beyond on working on your bike, we work on bikes because it's our passion. Don't be scared to trust a mechanic, but I do suggest finding one that you're comfortable with. And I have to say this, don't judge a mechanic by their appearance. You'll be surprised how much expertise someone might have who doesn't fit that traditional image of what a mechanic should look like. And here's the positive takeaway I want you to get from this is, the more knowledge you have of how things work behind the scenes, the more likely you're able to get the best service possible. Because there's definitely a handful of mechanics out there who want to provide good service for your bike and really do care and give a fuck, to say the least. You just have to know how to find them. Now, with all the questions I've asked in this video, feel free to spill the beans in the comments below, because your experiences that you've had might save someone else from having to deal with a similar headache. And I do want to add, if you want to support the channel, there is a link below in the description of how you can take a step further and support this channel, keep these videos going. But with that said, y'all have a great day out there. Y'all stay safe, but most of all, don't forget to love and to be kind to those around you.